Hey there. Forget the bedtime fairy tales. Forget the polished, gentle versions where the gods are patient parents and creation is a warm blanket tucked neatly under your chin. The truth is older than comfort and, honestly, darker. Tonight you will meet the Anunnaki as the first city dwellers felt them, not as loving guardians, but as dangerous authorities. You will hear about a god killed so his blood could be stirred into clay. You will hear about a world drowned because the sound of human life was too loud for a divine sleep. And you will hear about the survivors offering meat to the heavens, while the gods gathered close, hungry, like flies circling warmth. If you find a strange peace in stories like this, if the hush inside darkness feels better than a bright lie, leave a like and consider subscribing. It keeps the fire going. It keeps these late-night walks into ancient shadows coming back to you again and again until your eyes grow heavy. Now, only now, let your shoulders fall. Let your hands loosen. If there is a light on, you can turn it down or turn it off. Let the room become soft around you. Let your breath become slow, as if you are listening to it from far away. Good. And as you settle, I want you to picture heat, not the clean heat of a modern room with smooth walls and quiet air, a living heat that clings to skin, a heat that smells like dust, barley, and river water that has been sitting too long under the sun, a heat that makes you aware of your own pulse, your own sweat, your own smallness. It is evening in Uruk, about 4,000 years ago, the first great city, mud brick and reed, canals and courtyards, people packed close together on a plain where the land is flat enough that you can see the horizon like a line drawn by a careful hand. The sun is low, swollen, red as an ember. It slides toward the edge of the world, and when it dips behind the ziggurat answers by throwing a shadow across the courtyard. The shadow stretches. It lengthens slowly, the way a long thought lengthens in your mind when you cannot fall asleep. It is heavy, that shadow. It feels like the building is breathing out. You can almost hear it moving. A family is crossing the packed earth toward the temple. They are not rich. They are not starving. They live in that narrow, trembling middle where one bad season can break a household and one lucky harvest can buy you a year of breath. Their sandals make a dry sound, a small scuff, a whisper of grit, the kind of sound you only notice when everything else has gone quiet. You know it, I think. The rasp of dust underfoot, the tiny crunch of a pebble rolling away from a heel. They are trying very hard not to be loud. The father carries a basket lined with cloth. Inside it, bread baked flat, edges cracked and browned. The mother holds a clay jug sealed with pitch, beer inside, still warm from the day. It sweats faintly in the heat. A child clutches a small figurine, a lump of fired clay, shaped into a body with a head. Crude, yes, but with eyes pressed deeper than the rest. Two small shadows that make it look as if it is staring back. Their hands tremble, not with joy, not with reverence, with fear. And I always pause on that, because it tells you something that people forget when they talk about the glory of the first civilizations. Civilization was not only invention and pride, it was also anxiety. It was also the feeling of living under powers you could not argue with, powers you could not vote out, powers you could not escape, because they were in the sky, in the river, in the wind that dried your fields, in the flood that could erase your walls overnight. The family reaches the edge of the courtyard, where stone begins. The stone holds the day's warmth and releases it slowly. A faint shimmer rises from it, like breath you can see. The air feels tight, not because it is cold, because it is watched. Carved reliefs on the walls catch the last light of the sun. Faces appear, then disappear. For a heartbeat, a god's cheekbone glows. Then it sinks back into shadow. It looks like blinking. It looks like the wall is alive. Somewhere inside, You hear a low instrument, a string plucked and allowed to die. One note, silence, then another note, careful as a footstep in a sleeping house. The child looks up, eyes wide. The child wants to ask a question. You can see it in the way their lips part. The mother touches 2 fingers gently to the child's mouth. Not harsh, not angry, urgent. A soft shushing that is also a lesson. Do not make noise here. They pass through a doorway that smells of oil and smoke. The light changes. Outside, evening is still bright enough that you can see your own hands. Inside, the world becomes lamp and shadow. The air is cooler in a way that does not comfort. It is the cool of stone that has never been warmed by the sun. It slides over the skin like water over a fish. Their footsteps change sound on the temple floor. Less dust, more echo. A softer, deeper thud that makes you aware of the size of the room. Then you see them. The statues, massive forms in flickering lamplight. Stone bodies carved too tall, too broad, shoulders squared like cliffs. Their faces are calm, and that calm is unsettling, because it is the calm of something that does not need to care. Their eyes are inlaid darker, so the pupils swallow light. When the flame wavers, the shadows in the eyes shift, and it feels as if the statue has blinked. The family steps in, and the sense of being watched becomes physical, like a hand laid across the back of the neck, like a weight on the tongue. You know that feeling, right? When you walk into a room and you suddenly become aware of yourself, your posture, your breath, the way your clothing touches your skin, the tiny sound of your swallow. It is that feeling multiplied until it becomes a kind of pressure. The priests move quietly around the statue, barefoot, linen robes whispering. One holds a bowl of water, another holds a cloth. They will wash the statue's hands later. They will dress it. They will feed it, because for the people of Uruk, a consecrated statue is not a symbol. It is a body, a place for the god to be. Bodies need care. Bodies need food. Bodies need obedience. A small lamp throws light across a table. On the table are other offerings. Dates, a little dish of salt, a piece of meat wrapped in leaves. It smells rich, fatty, warm, and the smell makes the child hungry. But the child does not reach, because the child knows the rule. The god eats first. Humans eat what remains. Even food is a hierarchy here. The family kneels, knees on cold stone. The father lowers the basket with both hands, as if placing a sleeping infant into a cradle. The mother lifts the jug of beer and holds it up, arms trembling, not from the weight, but from the effort of being steady, being correct, being invisible in the wrong way. Their prayer is not a song. It is a plea. Please do not notice us. Please do not be angry. Please let us survive another year. That is the heart of it. Worship as survival, not romance, not devotion as sweetness. I have read enough old prayers to recognize that tone. The tone of someone speaking to a power that does not have to care. The tone you use when you knock on a door you are afraid to open. Outside, the city hums. Uruk is alive. Canals cut through the earth like veins, carrying water that smells of river weeds. Mud brick houses pressed together, walls holding the heat of the day. Vendors fold up mats and count barley. Dogs nose through scraps. Children chase each other until they are shouted at and pulled inside. Noise, life. Inside the temple, that noise is a danger, because the gods of this place, the oldest gods whose names we can still read on clay tablets, were not famous for tenderness. They were famous for moods, for tempers that could become weather, for decisions that could become famine. The family stays low. The father keeps his eyes down, because to meet the gaze of the statue feels like standing too close to the edge of a cliff. The mother counts her breaths without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, as if breath itself is a ritual. The child stares at the statue's feet, at toes carved carefully, toes that look too human, too solid. The child wonders, quietly, if stone toes can step out of the darkness at night and walk through the city. The child does not say this out loud. The child keeps the thought inside like a small animal hiding under cloth. If you listen carefully, you can hear the temple itself, the creak of wood as the building cools, the faint crackle of a wick, the soft, wet sound of water poured into a bowl, the whisper of linen cloth drawn across stone. A priest inhales. A priest exhales. Somewhere, a chain of beads clicks softly as a hand moves. It would almost be soothing if you did not know what it meant, because this is where the story begins, not with a hero, not with a chosen one, with ordinary people and an ordinary fear, repeated for thousands of years until it becomes the shape of a civilization. The gods can crush you without even lifting their eyes. Thutlong Manoi. I always feel a strange ache when I picture this scene, because it is so familiar. The instinct to appease, the habit of shrinking, the quiet calculation in a person's head. What do I have to give so I can be left alone? You know that feeling, don't you? When you are trying to stay on the safe side of someone else's mood, when you choose your words carefully, when you laugh softly at the right moment, when you hope not to be singled out. It is ancient. It is modern. It is human. The family finishes the offering. The priest nods, almost imperceptibly. A permission granted. The father rises slowly. His knees crack. He hides the sound with a cough that is too small to matter. The mother takes the child's hand, and the child's fingers are damp with sweat. They back away, not turning their backs on the statue too quickly. Respect. Yes, fear, more than respect. The doorway to the courtyard looks bright now, a rectangle of fading daylight. They step through it, and the heat wraps around them again like cloth. Outside, night is settling. The sky turns purple, then deep blue. One star appears, then another. The city is still noisy, but softer now. Pots clink. People speak in low voices. A donkey brays somewhere far away, a rough sound that makes the child flinch, as if it might travel upward into the sky and wake something. And this is the secret that neat history books rarely say out loud. In Mesopotamia, the earliest gods were not the gentle ones. They were not cosmic parents. They were powerful rulers, and humans were beneath them. Back at our own fire, I can almost hear the same kind of quiet, the kind of quiet that is not empty, but careful, the kind that says, "Stay still, and you will be safe." The flames lick a log, and the log gives a soft pop, like a tiny drum beat. In Uruk, the temple lamps do that too, little sounds that make people glance up, just in case the god has shifted inside the stone. The family does not speak as they walk home. They hold their breath in pieces, a few steps, then a slow exhale, a few more, then another. The father keeps thinking about the fields, about the canal that silted up last month, and how he will have to join the labor crew tomorrow to dredge it. He thinks of his shoulders aching under the sun. He thinks of barley heads heavy with grain, and the fear that a storm could flatten them overnight. He does not think of it as weather. He thinks of it as mood. The mother thinks about illness, a cough in the neighbor's house, a fever that took her sister's child last winter. She remembers the way the little body felt too light in her arms, and how the priest said a god had turned his face away. She does not argue. What would be the point? She only tries to be careful, tries to be correct, tries to keep her own children from drawing the wrong kind of attention. And the child is holding that small clay figurine still, fingers tight around it. The child glances back once, toward the temple, toward the ziggurat rising like a dark stairway into the sky. The child imagines the statue's eyes still open in the darkness, still watching, even when no one is inside. The thought is scary, yes, and there is another thought mixed with it, quieter, almost tender. If the god is watching, maybe the god will not let the roof fall in. Maybe the god will keep the river in its banks. Maybe, if the offerings are right, the world will keep working. That is how fear becomes faith. Not because fear is beautiful, because fear is useful. They pass a canal where the water is black now, reflecting the first thin stars. A frog croaks. The sound is abrupt. The child flinches. The mother squeezes the child's hand, not to scold, just to steady. Somewhere, a night bird calls. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then stops, as if it remembers it should not bark too much. Uruk is settling into sleep. Doors are barred. Lamps are lowered. People lie on reed mats. You can picture them, bodies arranged like commas in the dark, listening to the city breathe, a far-off murmur of voices, a baby fussing, then quiet, the scrape of a pot being set down, the soft slap of water against a mud brick edge, and above it all, the ziggurat stands, a silhouette, a promise, a warning. Thatlong Manoi, when I imagine that tower against the sky, I feel two things at once. Awe, because humans built it with their own hands, brick by brick, in heat that would make you dizzy, and sorrow, because the tower is also a confession. We believe the ones above us are dangerous, and we are building a staircase, so they will be pleased. The family reaches their doorway. The father lifts the reed mat that covers it. The smell inside is familiar. Clay, smoke, a faint sweetness from stored grain. The child steps in and looks at the ceiling beams, counting them as if counting could hold them up. The mother sets down the empty jug. Her arms feel lighter now, but her chest still holds that tight knot of temple air. They lie down. The city continues its slow hush, and somewhere beyond the walls, the river moves in the dark, patient and indifferent, carrying silt, carrying reeds, carrying the memory of floods. If you are listening to this in your own bed, safe, I want you to take a small comfort here. You are not in Uruk. The statue cannot see you. The ziggurat cannot cast its shadow into your room. We are only walking through the story, holding it like a coal that cannot burn us, letting its heat become a gentle warmth. In a moment, we will climb the first steps of that cosmic stairway. We will look up into the sky realm. We will look down into the dust realm below. We will name the powers that move between them. And we will do it slowly, quietly, so the night stays calm. The night grows quieter, the way a long corridor grows quieter the farther you walk down it. The candle has burned low enough that the flame sits closer to its own pool of wax, and the wax glows softly, translucent at the edges. The fire makes a slow, patient sound, a tiny crackle, a sigh, a settling. I want you to keep that steadiness with you, because the Sumerians imagined the world as steady too, in a strange way. Dangerous, yes. Unpredictable, yes. But structured, layered, ordered like a tower. If you close your eyes, you can build their cosmos as if you are stacking bricks in the dark. At the top is the sky, not the sky you and I know, measured by science, dotted with satellites, explained by physics. Their sky is a realm, a place with walls, a place with doors, a place where the highest decisions live. They called it An, heaven. And at the highest height, so far above the dust of Uruk that most people would never dare imagine his face clearly, there is Anu, king of the gods, father of the divine line, but also distant. I always picture Anu as more presence than person, like the weight of a storm you cannot see, only feel in the pressure of air. The tablets speak of him in a way that feels careful, as if even a scribe pressing marks into clay is watching his own hands, thinking, softly, do not say too much, do not pull the gaze down. When Anu notices humanity, something has already gone wrong. Below An is Ki, the earth, our layer, the layer where hands get dirty and backs bend, the layer of canals and clay, of dates and barley, of sweat drying into salt at the edge of your hairline. The Sumerians lived on a plain where the land could be generous and cruel in the same week. Rivers could feed you, rivers could erase you. A landscape like that teaches you something early. Power is not always moral. Power is often just power, doing what it does. And below earth is Kur, sometimes called Irkalla, the underworld, a place of dust and shadow, not a blazing hell, not a shining paradise, just a realm where sunlight never reaches, where the air tastes dry, where the dead exist like faint echoes, so the universe is stacked, sky, earth, underworld. Now, listen to what makes the Anunnaki feel so unsettling in the oldest sources. They are not confined to one layer. They do not remain politely in heaven, while humans toil below. They move, they descend, they rise, they cross thresholds. If you have ever felt that chill, when something crosses a boundary it should not cross, you understand the dread. Like hearing footsteps upstairs when you know you are alone. Like seeing a door swing slightly when there is no wind. Like feeling watched through a crack in a curtain. The Anunnaki were that feeling given names. Anunnaki. Some scholars translate it as offspring of Anu. Some as those of royal blood. Some as those who came down from heaven to earth. You can feel the meaning either way. These are the ones with permission. The ones who belong to the upper rooms of reality. The ones who can enter the world of mortals and leave again, without asking, without explaining. In the temple, their presence becomes stone and gold. In myth, their presence becomes hierarchy. At the top of that hierarchy is Anu, yes, but the gods humans actually feared on a daily basis were closer. The ones who touched weather, the ones who touched disease, the ones who could turn a season. Enlil. I always pause when I say his name. Enlil, Lord of Air, Lord of Wind. The phrase sounds gentle if you let it. Air keeps you alive. Wind cools skin. Wind fills sails. Wind dries grain after rain. But in these stories, Enlil is not a gentle breeze. He is the kind of wind that strips roofs. The kind that drives sand into your eyes until you cannot see. The kind that turns a calm river into a living animal, swelling, snapping, biting into the banks. He is breath and storm. He is the pressure that makes a city hold its own breath. And he is the God who gets angry about noise. Noise, not rebellion, not wickedness, noise. Think about it slowly. A child crying in the night, a marketplace at noon, hammers on wood, voices calling across a canal, laughter, arguments, the ordinary friction of life. In the Atrahasis story, this is what disturbs Enlil's sleep. This is what makes him decide, coldly, that humanity can be erased. If you were raised on later beliefs where gods weigh the heart, where punishment is tied to moral guilt, that motive feels petty. That pettiness is exactly what makes it frightening. Because absolute power does not need to be fair. It does not need to make sense to you. It only needs to satisfy itself. Then there is Enki. Enki is the one people soften, the wise one, the helper, the god of fresh water and crafts, the keeper of secrets. And yes, in the flood story, he is the one who warns the human who will survive. But I cannot help feeling wary of him, because the same texts that show his help also show his calculation. Enki is clever. Cleverness is not the same thing as kindness. Cleverness can lift you up. Cleverness can also place you exactly where it wants you. You know the feeling when someone saves you and you are grateful, but somewhere inside your chest you sense a hook, like you have been pulled from a river, and now you owe a debt you did not agree to, a debt you cannot name yet. That is Enki's shadow, the trickster who helps when it serves him, the planner who smiles while sliding pieces across a board only he can see. And then there is the mother figure, Ninhursag, Ninma, Nintu, names shifting like water. She is the hands that shape clay. I always linger on her hands. Because the myth gives you such a tactile image. Wet earth from the riverbank, heavy, cool. The smell of clay is particular, damp mineral, a faint sweetness, like the inside of a pot before it is fired. It clings under fingernails. It stains the lines of the palm. It makes the hand look older. In many traditions, hands that shape humans are loving hands. A potter proud of a vessel. Here, the hands work because there is a problem to solve. A labor problem, a hierarchy problem, a comfort problem for the gods above. The Anunnaki, in these stories, have bodies. They eat, they drink, they wear elaborate garments. They carry weapons described in ways that make you imagine mountains splitting and cities trembling. Their radiance has a word, melam. Melam is not just light, it is presence, overwhelming presence. A brilliance that does not comfort, the kind of brightness that makes you look away not because your eyes burn, but because your mind does. A mortal stands too close and collapses, not from a blow, from the sheer force of being near authority that is older than your species. Try to picture Melam quietly, not as a flash, as steady pressure. Like standing near a furnace, you do not touch it. You do not need to. Your skin knows it is there. Your lungs know it. Your thoughts thin out until there is only one instinct left. Bow. This is why temples felt the way they did. Not primarily houses of comfort. Houses of management. Places where human beings tried to keep the divine gaze from turning sharp. And the people who copied the tablets understood that. Imagine a scribe, cross-legged in a corner, a small lamp beside him. The lamp smells of sesame oil. The flame is small, steady, and it paints a thin layer of light on wet clay. The scribe holds a stylus. He presses wedge-shaped marks into the tablet. One press, a tiny click, another press, another click. A line of signs that will outlast his bones. His wrist aches. His eyes sting from smoke. He keeps going anyway, because these are not just stories to him. They are warnings. They are instructions. They are a map of the hierarchy that keeps his city alive. I always feel a strange respect when I imagine that. Scribe, not admiration for the gods, respect for the human instinct underneath. If we know the rules, maybe we can survive. Because when you live under gods like these, you do not ask, will they be kind? You ask, how do we stay unnoticed? How do we stay useful? How do we stay quiet enough that the storm does not choose us? And you can feel that question everywhere in their world. In the architecture, in the daily rituals, in the way a person lowers their voice near a sanctuary, in the way a mother teaches a child with 2 fingers on the mouth that silence is safety. Hold that image gently, the fingers, the hush, the controlled breath. In the next movement of our story, that hush will become an origin. We will step back before the family, before Uruk, into a time when even the lesser gods were forced to work, until they broke, a revolt in the dark, tools set on fire, a great god startled awake by an angry crowd, and from that crisis, a solution made of blood and clay. For now, listen to the room again, the fire, the candle, the soft shifts of air. Let the thought of those stacked worlds drift above you like smoke, sky, earth, underworld, and between them, crossing thresholds as easily as breath, the Anunnaki. If you want, we can climb the cosmos the way you climb a ziggurat, not quickly, not with effort, with the slow patience of a dream. Picture the first step, the lowest terrace, the place where humans stand. It is crowded down here. Markets, workyards, storerooms, the smell of bread, the smell of animals, the smell of wet reeds. There is always something to fix. A wall that cracks in the heat, a canal that needs dredging, a roof that leaks when the rare heavy rain comes. Your days are made of small problems, and your nights are made of the fear that the problems will become disasters. Now picture the next step, higher, the place where priests move, where the air is quieter, where footsteps are softer, because bare feet do not want to echo. Here the world begins to feel less like a village and more like a court. Words are chosen carefully. Gestures matter. A bowl is placed at the right angle. A hymn is spoken with the correct breath. The idea is simple. If the ritual is correct, maybe the universe will stay stable. You can almost feel how exhausting that is. Constant attention, constant calibration. It is like living with a sleeping giant in the next room. You learn to set down a cup without clinking it. You learn to close a door without letting it slam. You learn to whisper. You learn to apologize, even when you do not know what you did. Now, higher still, another step, a terrace few people reach, the sanctuary level. The doorways are narrower. The light is dimmer. The smell of incense is thicker. The statue sits in its chamber like a mountain made of human shape. In the mind of the city, this is where the god is most present, most awake, most capable of noticing. And above that, above all the brick, above all the careful human labor, the sky realm begins. Heaven. When I try to imagine the way the Sumerians might have, I do not picture endless blue. I picture a ceiling, a vault, a high dome that holds the world like a lid, and beyond that lid, divine halls, divine councils, a place where decisions are made that filter down into wind and rain and war. This is where Anu belongs, not because he is kind, because he is highest. It is an odd thing, the way hierarchy works. Even when you are terrified of power, you still arrange it. You still put a name at the top. You still say, this one is above the others. This one is older. This one has the final word. It makes the fear feel organized. It makes the universe feel, if not safe, at least readable. Below Anu's distance, there is the everyday reach of Enlil and Enki. And here, if you listen to the myths, you can almost hear divine politics, the way you hear politics in any palace. Alliances, oaths, offenses. One god insisting on order, another god bending rules. One god wanting silence, another god wanting life to continue because life produces offerings. It is uncomfortable to admit, but from divine power in Mesopotamia often feels like bureaucracy. A council, an assembly, decisions voted on, oaths sworn, punishments administered. The coldness is not only anger, it is procedure. And then there is Kur, the underworld. Kur is not simply a place under the ground. Kur is the shadow beneath every human joy. When a child laughs in a courtyard, Kur is there, waiting. When a marriage feast fills a house with music, Kur is there, patient. When a king builds walls and boasts, Kur is there, silent as dust. The Sumerians imagined Kur with a kind of bleak honesty, dust instead of bread, darkness instead of light. The dead eating clay, wearing feathers, living as pale echoes, no shining reward, no bright heaven for ordinary people, just the certainty of descent. This matters because it changes the emotional shape of life. If you do not expect paradise later, you cling harder to stability now. You bring offerings now. You obey now. You try to keep the gods content now, because after death there is no escape from their system. The Anunnaki do not lose you when you stop breathing. Their reach extends downward too. Sometimes the old texts speak of 7 judges in the underworld, the Anunnaki, seated in a dark hall, eyes like death, voices like a flood. Even a goddess can be stripped at 7 gates. Even a divine figure can be judged. If that is true for them, what does it mean for you? It means you keep your head down. It means you learn the habit of fear until it feels like common sense. I always feel a little chill when I imagine a funeral in that world. The body wrapped, the mourners wailing, the priest murmuring formulas, the family pouring beer into the ground so the ghost will not starve, the sound of liquid sinking into soil. A simple sound, soft, and yet it carries the weight of an entire worldview. Remember the dead, because the dead are hungry. And all of it, from sky to earth to underworld, is threaded through with the same assumption. The gods are real in the way weather is real. You cannot persuade weather to be moral. You can only read signs. You can only prepare. That is why omens mattered so much. A strange birth of an animal, a pattern in the liver of a sacrificed sheep, an eclipse swallowing the moon, a dream that tastes of metal. The priest watches, interprets, speaks. Enlil is displeased. Enki requires a ritual. The city must offer more, must clean itself, must change something, because something unseen has shifted. This is not superstition as comedy. It is survival logic in a fragile world. When your harvest depends on a river, and a river can turn, you look for reasons. You look for patterns. You look for a language that can explain why the world hurts. And so the Anunnaki become that language, a terrifying vocabulary, a way to say, the universe has rulers, and rulers have moods. Stay with me as we hold that thought gently, like a cup of warm water. In the next part of our journey, we will watch the divine workforce break. We will see the lesser gods, the Igigi, sweating in mud, digging canals, and finally setting their tools on fire in rebellion. And then, the gods above will ask a question that changes everything. Who will do the work now? The story moves backward now, away from the family, away from the temple lamps, away from the warm beer and the flatbread. It moves into a time before human hands were assigned their endless work. If you listen closely, you can hear it already. The sound of digging, not human digging, divine digging. In the Atrahasis tradition, before humanity ever walked the riverbanks, there were workers in the cosmos. They were called the Igigi, lesser gods, yes, still gods. They had names that mattered to the scribes, but not to the people who would later beg for rain. They were the unseen laborers who kept the world running, while the greater gods sat in their high places. Picture them, not as glowing angels, not as clean spirits. Picture bodies in mud. The plain is wide and flat, the way Mesopotamia always is, and the heat is the same heavy heat you felt in Uruk. The sun presses down like a palm. The air tastes of dust. The riverbanks are soft, dark, full of wet silt that clings to skin. The Igigi stand waist deep in it, lifting baskets, cutting channels, hauling earth away one load at a time. Their tools are simple: spades, picks, baskets woven from reeds. The sound is repetitive. A thud, a scrape, the wet slap of mud falling into a pile. Their shoulders move in the same rhythm for so long that rhythm becomes a kind of prison. You know the feeling of repetition, right? When a task has no end, when your body does it without thinking, and your mind starts to drift into strange corners just to escape. Now imagine that drift, lasting not for hours, not for days, but for centuries. For millennia, the texts give a number, sometimes 40 years, sometimes 3,600 years. The exact count shifts, depending on the tablet, the scribe, the tradition. The feeling does not shift. Endless labor, endless obedience. The Igigi dig canals that will later feed human fields. They dredge the Tigris and the Euphrates. They heap embankments higher. They drag stone. They carry timbers. They raise the first foundations of temples that will one day be crowded with human offerings. Above them, the great gods rest. You can picture the contrast as if it is a painting lit by fire. In the low place, sweat and mud. In the high place, cool shade and music. The greater gods drink, they eat, they recline. Their comfort is built on work they do not touch. The Igigi sweat. Yes, even gods can sweat in these stories. Sweat streaks down the sides of their faces and mixes with river silt until it becomes a thin paste. They wipe it away with the back of a wrist and it comes back again. Their hands blister, their hands harden. Their hands become the kind of hands you see on laborers, knuckled, cracked, permanently stained. They do not labor because they have done wrong. They labor because they are lesser, because hierarchy has a bottom rung, because someone must carry the load. That is the cruelty hidden in the myth, not punishment, assignment. The pressure builds slowly. It is not one dramatic day. It is years of fatigue layered on years of fatigue. It is the quiet humiliation of being ordered by beings who never lift a basket. It is the feeling of being necessary and still despised. The Igigi begin to meet in secret. At night, when the plain cools and the river breathes mist, they gather, not in palaces, in the dark edges of work sites, behind half-built walls, in shallow hollows where the wind does not carry voices far. Their whispers are rough, like throats scraped dry by dust. Their eyes are tired. Their anger is careful at first, because even anger has to survive. What if we stop? What if we throw down the tools? What if we refuse? It is an old thought, the oldest thought of the oppressed, and it sounds simple until you try to do it, because stopping work is not just stopping, it is stepping into the unknown. Finally, the moment comes. The Igigi gather their tools. They carry spades and baskets like weapons. They move together, not running, not shouting. A line of bodies crossing the night. The sky is dark, thick with stars, and the earth under their feet is still warm from the day. Each step makes a soft crunch in dried mud. They reach the house of Enlil. In this myth, Enlil is not only storm and air, he is also authority, the one who gives orders, the one who expects obedience the way a king expects it. The Igigi surround his dwelling in the dead of night. Then they do something that feels almost tender, almost symbolic. They set fire to their tools. Flames climb up reed handles. Smoke rises. The smell is sharp, bitter, like burnt grass. The firelight makes their faces look carved, harsh, determined. The sound of cracking wood is loud in the night, and for a moment you can imagine Enlil inside, startled awake, listening. The Igigi shout their refusal. "We will work no more." Enlil is terrified. The tablet tradition is almost blunt about it. A great god, one of the powerful, feeling fear because those beneath him have gathered as one. It is a strange image. Power threatened not by a bigger power, but by a crowd. An emergency council is called. The great gods gather. Anu is invoked. The atmosphere shifts. This is not a small dispute. The work of maintaining creation is breaking down. Without canals, fields dry. Without embankments, water spills wrong. Without labor, the structures of the world begin to sag. The great gods do not volunteer to pick up the spades. That is important. That is the cold center. They need a solution that preserves their comfort. Enki speaks. Enki, the clever one. The one who knows the underground waters. The one who plans in quiet corners. He offers an idea that is brilliant and terrible at once. Create a new worker, not a god. A being that can be made in numbers. A being that can carry loads. A being that will not threaten divine authority. A worker made to obey. And here the story turns dark in a very specific way, because the raw material for this new worker will be blood. The gods seize one of the rebels. In some versions, his name is Gestu, the one with intelligence. In other tellings, a different name appears. Again, the name shifts. The act stays. They kill him, not with hatred, not with rage, with procedure. A sacrifice for convenience. Divine butchery, done as calmly as you might slaughter an animal for food. The story does not flinch from the image. Blood is caught in a basin, thick, dark, steaming slightly in the night air. Clay is gathered from the Apsu, the deep freshwater abyss beneath the earth. Imagine hands scooping wet earth, cool and heavy. Imagine the smell rising, damp mineral, alive with the memory of riverbeds. Blood is poured into clay. It spreads. It stains. It turns the earth into something richer, darker, heavier. The mixture is kneaded, pressed, folded, like dough, like mortar, like the making of bricks, except this brick will breathe. The mother goddess is called Nintu, Ninma, Ninarsag. She comes not as a gentle mother, but as a craftswoman hired for a job. Her hands are the hands of a potter, strong, precise, familiar with shaping. She divides the clay into portions, 14 pieces in the tablet, 7 male, 7 female. The language is practical, almost clinical. Pinch, set, arrange, a brick mold placed between them. This is not a garden creation. This is a workshop. The goddesses of birth assist. They are like midwives in a factory. The myth speaks of wombs and gestation, of a process that is both biological and ritual. The clay forms are placed, blessed, spoken over. Incantations murmured like instructions. And then, the moment of life. The first humans open their eyes, not with wonder, with confusion, with the raw shock of being. Imagine a clay figure taking its first breath, lungs filling for the first time, throat tightening, eyes blinking against light. Imagine that first inhale tasting of smoke and damp earth. Imagine the first heartbeat starting like a drum you did not know existed. They are alive, and the gods speak their purpose aloud. Let man bear the yoke. Let man assume the drudgery of the gods. That sentence lands like a stone. That is the theology. Not love, not companionship, labor, that long manoi. I always feel a tightness when I linger on that line, because it turns existence into assignment. It tells you that consciousness, the ability to think, to plan, to fear, was installed like a feature, not to make you free, to make you efficient. The new humans are let out. They stand in the mud where the Igigi once stood. They are smaller, weaker, softer. Their hands are not yet hardened. Their backs are not yet trained to the weight of baskets. Their eyes dart. They look up at the sky as if searching for explanation. No explanation comes. A tool does not get an explanation. The Igigi step back. Their rebellion has won. The burden has moved. And the world continues, held together now by creatures made of clay and stolen blood, blinking in the heat, learning the shape of their chains. The fire beside you crackles softly. The night remains calm. Your breath remains slow. And in the distance of 4,000 years, the first human workers lift the first baskets, and the sound of digging begins again. The fire stays low. Your breath stays slow. The fire stays low. Your breath stays slow. The first days of humanity are not sung as a golden age. There is no orchard of peace, no gentle God walking in the evening breeze, no promise that the world was made for you. There is mud, there is heat, there is work. Imagine the first human hands touching a spade. The handle is rough, dried reed wrapped around wood. It scrapes the skin of the palm. The first blister forms, a bright, tender spot that throbs when the hand closes again. The human does not yet have calluses. The human learns quickly. The Igigi are gone from the work sites. In their place, bodies of clay and blood move in awkward rhythm. They lift baskets that feel too heavy. They carry earth that sticks to ankles. They cough when dust rises. Their throats are raw. Their eyes water. They look at the sky sometimes, squinting, as if the sky might answer why they exist. The sky does not answer. Enlil wants order, so order is imposed. The humans are organized into crews. Some dig, some haul, some stack bricks, some cut reeds, some tend the first herds. Someone is put in charge, because hierarchy loves a middle layer, a foreman, a supervisor, later, a king. You can feel how it starts. A few humans with slightly stronger voices, slightly harder faces, learn to repeat divine will. They say, Do this, dig here, build that wall higher. They are not gods, they are humans. But they borrow authority the way a child borrows an adult's coat, wearing it because the cold is real. The canals extend, water is guided, fields begin to produce more grain than a wandering life ever could. The city grows. Uruk becomes crowded with sound. Children cry, markets shout, dogs bark, hammers strike. The sound of life multiplies, and every sound is built on labor that was never chosen. That long manoi. I always find it eerie to connect those things. The beauty of a city at dusk, smoke rising, bread baking, music drifting across rooftops, is also the sound of chains. Not visible chains, mythic chains. The deep assumption that you exist to maintain someone else's comfort. Temples rise. At first, they are simple, reed and mud brick. Then, they become layered, stepped, climbing upward. Ziggurats, artificial mountains in a flat world. Humans haul bricks under the sun until their vision shimmers. They press clay into molds, lift, stack, press again. The rhythm of building becomes a trance. A brick placed, a breath taken, another brick placed. The ziggurat grows. Its shadow grows with it. The shadow crosses courtyards, crosses markets, crosses homes. A moving reminder that above you is a shrine you cannot enter. Inside the temple complex, the statues are cared for like royal bodies. The priests wash them, dress them, feed them. The food is real. Grain grown by human hands. Beer brewed by human hands. Meat raised by human hands. Humans sweat so stone can eat. It is not only labor, it is economy. The temple owns land. The temple owns herds. The temple owns workshops. Tablets record barley counts, wool tallies, lists of workers. Everything flows upward, like smoke rising, like prayers rising, like grain rising into storerooms that belong to the god. This is how a myth becomes a system. A story becomes a schedule. A divine decree becomes a daily chore. And the humans accept it because what is the alternative? The alternative is anger. Anger that can become drought. Anger that can become disease. Anger that can become flood. The priests read signs to keep that anger predictable. They watch birds. They examine livers. They listen to dreams. They read the sky like a text. A strange eclipse. A malformed lamb. A comet. The priest makes a pronouncement, and the city moves like one body. Offer more. Clean more. Repent. Even when you do not know what you have done. People beat their chests in hymns. They tear garments. They kneel before stone and call themselves servants, slaves, black-headed people made to carry the yoke. It is not a metaphor to them. It is identity. Now imagine the psychological weight. A child grows up hearing the creation story in the temple. The child learns that the blood in his veins is divine blood, stolen from a slain god. The child learns that intelligence is not a gift for joy. It is a tool for work. The child learns that the gods drowned the world once and can do it again. The child does not learn that life is precious. The child learns that life is conditional. If you want to understand why the Anunnaki were dreaded, sit with that. Sit with the feeling of living under managers who can erase your species because your voices are inconvenient. And then, as the city grows, the myth says the noise becomes a problem. At first, it is almost hard to believe. How could the sound of humans trouble gods who command storms? Yet that is what the tablets say. The clamor rose. The uproar disturbed Enlil's sleep. Sleep. The gods are powerful, but they are also portrayed as needing comfort. They eat offerings. They rest. They want quiet. So Enlil decides to reduce the noise, not with conversation, with suffering. First comes plague. Picture it softly, because even darkness can be whispered. A cough in one house, a fever in another, the smell of sickness, sharp and sour. A child sweating through a night, eyes glazed. A mother pressing a damp cloth to a forehead, whispering prayers into hair that is stuck to skin. The priest walks through streets with incense, smoke curling, trying to drive out a god of disease, trying to bargain with an unseen hand. People die. The city grows quieter for a time. Then the survivors have more children. Life returns. Noise returns. Enlil tries drought. The wind changes. It stops bringing moisture. The sky becomes a hard blue lid. Fields crack. The earth splits into thin, jagged lines like broken pottery. Farmers dig deeper wells. They haul water in jars that cut into shoulders. The taste of dust is constant. A goat bleats weakly, ribs showing. A woman counts grain and knows it will not last. The city grows quieter, not from sleep, from hunger. Then rain returns. The people rebuild. The canals still exist. The humans adapt. They make noise again. They always do, because noise is life. Enlil tries famine. Storerooms empty. Bread becomes thinner. Beer becomes weak. People argue in markets. The arguing is a different kind of noise. Sharp, desperate. The gods have not solved their problem. They have only shifted it. In the myth, this frustrates Enlil. Humanity is resilient. Humanity keeps returning. Humanity keeps filling the world with sound. So Enlil calls another council. You can imagine the atmosphere of that divine meeting as if it is a room full of smoke, not warm smoke, cold smoke. A council of powers, deciding the fate of beings who cannot speak in the room. The decision takes shape like a shadow. No more half measures. A flood, total, overwhelming. The gods swear an oath. None will warn humanity. And here, right at the edge of that decision, the night holds its breath. Because one god, Enki, hears the plan and hesitates. Enki, the clever one, the water lord, the maker of humans, does not like the idea of a world without offerings, a world without workers, a world without temples. Maybe he feels compassion. Maybe he feels defiance. Maybe he feels practicality. The tablets do not say. They only show him preparing to bend an oath without breaking it. For now, the flood has not come. The city still stands. The canals still run. The people still whisper prayers into stone, still carry baskets, still try to keep their voices low enough to let a god sleep. The fire beside you is steady. The candle is steady. Your breathing is steady. And in the darkness of the old world, a decision has been made in heaven, quiet as a hand turning a key. The fire stays low. Your breath stays slow. The fire stays low. Your breath stays slow. The decision has been made in the high rooms of the cosmos, and on Earth no one hears it as a voice. People only feel small shifts, a dryness in the wind, a taste in the air, a dream that leaves an uneasiness behind the ribs. In Uruk, the market still opens at dawn. The first light creeps over mud brick walls, turning them the color of old honey. A woman kneads dough with slow, strong wrists. A man checks a net along a canal, fingers cold from water. Children run, then get pulled back by sleeves, because even joy has to be managed. But somewhere, under all that ordinary life, a shadow is spreading. The gods have sworn an oath. No warning, no mercy, no loopholes. And yet, you already know how stories like this work. You can feel it. The tension in the old clay words. An oath is a strong thing, but not all gods keep their strength in the same place. Some keep it in storms. Some keep it in cleverness. Enki keeps it in the spaces between rules. He does not rush to the city to shout. He does not blow a trumpet, because that would be too direct. That would be too obvious. And Enki, in these myths, is never obvious. He is the one who smiles and slides behind the curtain, the one who bends a law without snapping it. So he goes to a wall of reeds. I love that detail. A wall of reeds, simple, ordinary. A fence made from the same plants that line the canals, something a farmer might lean on while talking. something a child might hide behind, something no one would suspect of carrying the difference between life and death. Behind that wall, in a house that smells of wet grass and smoke, lives a man. In some traditions, he is Atrahasis, the exceedingly wise. In others, Utnapishtim, the one who found life. Names change as they pass from Sumerian to Akkadian, as scribes copy and recopy, as empires rise and stamp their dialect onto old fear. But the man is the same shape in the story, a human close enough to wisdom that a god notices him. Enki does not speak to him directly. He speaks to the wall, as if the reed stems can listen, as if the wind can carry meaning into a house without violating an oath. Reed wall, Enki says, and the phrase feels like a whisper pressed into plant fibers. Listen, pay attention. A flood is coming. Tear down your house. Build a boat. Imagine the moment in the human body when those words land. A tightening in the belly, a coldness at the back of the neck, the mind trying to reject it because it is too large. Flood on a plain where drought is common, where people fear dry canals more than oceans. Flood feels like the opposite of what the land knows, but the god keeps speaking. Build it with precise care. Use bitumen. Seal the seams. Make the hull strong. Bring your family. Bring seed and animal life. Bring craftspeople. Bring whatever you can carry of the world you know, because the rest will be scrubbed away. The man sits very still as he listens. You know that kind of stillness, right? The kind that is not calm, but stunned. When you hear something that changes the shape of tomorrow, your body stops moving for a second. Even breath pauses. You become a statue in your own skin. Then, slowly, the man begins to think like a builder. He looks at the reed wall as if it is a mouth that just spoke. He looks at his hands. He looks outside at the canal, at the flat plain, at the sky, at the birds wheeling in the heat. Everything looks the same. Everything is already different. He does not have time to convince the whole city. He does not have the authority. And even if he did, the oath stands. The gods decided. The gods do not need consent. So he builds. And this is where the story becomes strangely practical, almost domestic in its terror. He gathers wood. He gathers reeds. He gathers pitch, bitumen that smells sharp, tar-like, like earth burned into oil. He measures. He cuts. He ties. He pounds pegs into place. Each strike of a tool is a heartbeat. Each plank laid down is a prayer without words. Neighbors watch. Of course they watch. Humans always watch what breaks routine. They lean on doorways. They squat in shade. They tilt their heads, as if looking at a strange animal. What are you doing? They ask. He cannot say, the gods will drown you. Not plainly. The story often gives him excuses. He says he is building for Enki, or for a journey, or for some vow. He says what he must to keep hands helping and mouths from turning into panic. The boat rises on the dry land like a ridiculous thought made solid. A massive shape far from deep water, a dark belly sealed with pitch until it shines. The smell of it hangs over the work site and clings to hair. Children wrinkle noses. Men cough. The tar sticks to fingers so badly that you have to rub with sand to get it off. Days pass. The sky stays ordinary. That is always the cruel part before disaster. The world keeps pretending it will continue. People keep bargaining with normality. The man brings animals. Not all of them, just the ones he can. Goats bleating, eyes bright with fear. Sheep stamping hooves. Birds in cages. Feathers ruffling. A dog whining. Tail low. Maybe a pair of cattle. Huge. Patient. Confused. The animals smell of warm bodies and straw and dung. It is life concentrated into a cramped space. He brings his family. Faces tight, eyes wide. Hands gripping bundles. He brings craftspeople, if the version allows it. Because after the flood, someone will have to rebuild, and rebuilding needs skill the way a body needs bone. Then, the change in the air comes. First, a wind that feels wrong, not a gentle evening breeze, not the dry sigh of heat. A wind with weight, a wind that carries a wet smell from far away, like a river swelling in the dark. Clouds gather, not thin white strands. Heavy masses, bruised colors piling on the horizon. The sky looks like clay being kneaded into a darker lump. Lightning flickers. No thunder yet, just distant flashes like eyes opening and closing beyond the edge of the world. The first drops fall. They hit dust and turn it into little dark spots that vanish quickly. People look up. They smile at first, because rain is relief. Hands lift, faces tilt. Someone laughs. Then the rain does not stop. It thickens. It becomes a sheet. The air cools fast. The ground turns slick. A canal overflows its bank and runs muddy into the street. People begin to shout. Animals pull at ropes. Roofs drip. The city smells of wet clay and fear. The man climbs into the boat. The entrance is sealed. Pitch is smeared. Ropes tightened. The last gap closed like an eyelid. Inside, it is dark, crowded, warm with bodies. The air is thick with animal breath. Every sound is amplified in the cramped space. A goat's bleat is loud. A child's whimper is loud. Even a swallow feels loud. Outside, the storm becomes something else. The tablets describe it as a turning back of creation. Water from above, water from below. The sky, black at noon. The ground shaking. The river no longer a river, but a wide moving force. Imagine the sound. Not just rain, a roar, a constant pounding that makes your chest vibrate. Lightning splitting the darkness in rapid flashes, turning the world into a series of harsh photographs. The smell of ozone, the taste of wet dust in the mouth, the air so full of water that it feels hard to breathe. Cities vanish, fields vanish, walls soften into mud and collapse. People climb onto roofs. They cling to beams. They call names. They pray. Their voices are carried away by wind that does not care. The boat lifts. First a gentle sway, then a stronger pull. The dry land that held it becomes a memory. It floats. It drifts. It is pushed by forces too big to argue with. Inside, the humans hold each other. The child presses face into a shoulder. The mother whispers a prayer that is really just counting breaths. The father grips a beam until his knuckles ache. The animals panic, then settle into exhausted silence as motion becomes constant. Wet straw shifts under hooves. Urine and fear mix into a sharp smell. Days pass. The myth says 7 days and 7 nights. In some tellings, longer. Time becomes meaningless. Inside the dark hull, there is only the rhythm of storm. Roar, shake, crash, pause, roar again. Sleep comes in fragments. When someone dozes, they wake startled, thinking the boat has broken. Outside, the world is being erased, and the gods, the tablets say, are afraid. This is another detail that makes the story cold. The flood is not only punishment. It is a force that frightens even the ones who ordered it. The Anunnaki cower. They crouch near the outer walls of heaven like dogs. The goddess cries out. She regrets. She wails like a woman in labor, seeing the destruction of her people. But regret does not restore the dead. The water keeps moving. Then, slowly, it begins to slow. The roar becomes less constant. The rain thins. The sky lightens from black to bruised gray. The boat bumps something solid. A scrape, a jolt. It settles. Silence arrives, like a strange gift. When the hatch is opened, the air that comes in smells clean and empty. It smells like a world with no cooking smoke, no market sweat, no human bodies. The man steps out carefully, feet sinking into wet earth, and looks around. Water everywhere, a vast sheet reflecting the sky. No rooftops, no palm trees, no walls, just drifting debris and the distant shape of a mountain or hill rising like the spine of something drowned. He releases a bird. It flaps out into open air, circles, returns. No dry place yet. He releases another. It circles, then does not return. The myth holds that moment with tenderness, a small wing beating against the vastness, searching for land, a sign that the world is not entirely gone. When the land finally emerges, it is raw, mud everywhere, the smell of wet earth, silence that feels too big. The man does what humans do in these stories when they survive. He makes an offering. He builds an altar of stones or packed earth. He lays wood. He lights fire. Smoke rises. The smell of roasting meat lifts into the air, rich and undeniable. And the gods, starved of offerings because no humans remain to feed them, gather. The tablets compare them to flies, not to insult them, but to show their need, their dependence. Their comfort still requires human labor. Even after they tried to erase the laborers, Enlil arrives and is furious. How did any humans survive, he demands. Who broke the oath? Enki is confronted. He does not plead mercy. He argues practicality. Who will maintain temples if all are dead? Who will provide offerings? Who will keep the world orderly? Enlil relents, but the relent is not kindness. It is control. Humans may continue, but their numbers must be limited. Infertility, miscarriage, infant mortality, disease, regular disasters, spaced like reminders. You may exist, but you will never be allowed to become too loud again. That is the covenant of fear in Mesopotamia, not a rainbow promise, a leash. Sit with that gently, the way you sit with the sound of rain on a roof when you are safe. The flood ends, the world restarts, and the survivors learn the lesson. Existence is a privilege granted by beings who can withdraw it for reasons as small as noise. And think of what happens inside the human chest after survival. The boat is resting. The ground is soft. The air is strangely bright after so many days of darkness. Yet the mind does not return to calm. The mind stays alert, waiting for the next blow. A twig snapping in the distance makes shoulders tense. A sudden gust makes everyone glance up at the sky as if a second council has already spoken. They move through the wreckage like people walking through a dream that has turned into mud. They find pieces of homes, broken reeds, a child's toy floating in a puddle. They do not know whose. They do not ask. Grief is too big to count. When the offering smoke rises, it does not feel like celebration. It feels like payment, a first installment, a way of saying, we are still here. We can still serve. Please do not finish what you started. The fire beside you stays steady. Your breathing stays steady. The storm has passed in the story, but its memory becomes a permanent shadow behind every prayer. After the flood, the world is quieter in a way that feels unnatural, not peaceful, bare. You can picture a plain scraped clean, mud drying into crust, puddles trapped in low places like dark mirrors, dead reeds tangled in piles, the air smelling of wet clay and rot, but also of something newborn, because emptiness always carries a strange potential. The survivors build again. They do what human beings do even when they are terrified. They stack bricks, they dig channels, they plant seed in damp soil and hope. They try to make the world predictable by repeating the gestures that once worked. And above them, the gods settle back into their pattern. Offerings return, temples reopen, priests wash statues and dress them. Bread is laid out, beer poured, music played for stone faces that might be inhabited by attention. But the fear after the flood is different. It has a sharper edge. Before, disaster could be imagined as a warning, a punishment, a bad season. Now, there is proof that the gods can erase everything simply because they want quiet. People do not just fear drought now, they fear the sentence. And because humans are allowed to exist only as long as they remain useful, usefulness becomes a kind of religion. You bring the best grain to the temple first, even when your children are hungry, because a god must eat before you do. You join labor crews to repair canals, because if the canal fails, the harvest fails, the offerings fail, and then the divine mood might shift again. You do not need to be told twice. Tatlong Manoi, there is something hauntingly modern in that logic. When survival depends on satisfying a system bigger than you learn to call obedience virtue. You learn to call fear wisdom. You learn to praise the leash because at least it is a leash and not a blade. In Mesopotamian thought, civilization itself is not fully human property. The myths say it is owned by the gods as me, divine decrees, fundamental powers that govern everything. Kingship, priesthood, writing, metalwork, music, sexuality, warfare, law, even destruction. Imagine that as a chest of objects, heavy and sealed, sitting in a deep place where humans cannot reach, a chest full of permission. You want to build a city. You need permission. You want to rule. You need permission. You want to write your name into clay so it will outlast your bones. You need permission. This is how dependence becomes permanent. Even your greatest achievements feel like loans that can be called in. And the gods themselves do not always share these me kindly. Sometimes they hoard them. Sometimes they trade them like weapons. Sometimes they lose them through trickery. There is a story that fits perfectly into this mood. A story about Inanna, queen of love and war, bright and dangerous as a blade. She goes to Enki, the wise god, the keeper of the me, who lives in the freshwater abyss, the Apsu, beneath the world. Picture his domain: dark water, coolness, a place where sound is muffled, pillars like submerged trees, lamps glimmering through water like stars seen from below. Enki sits there, surrounded by vessels of knowledge, by decrees wrapped in mystery. Inanna arrives with charm like perfume. She smiles. She speaks sweetly. She drinks with him. Enki drinks. The myth loves this detail. The god of wisdom, drunk. Because even wisdom has weaknesses. The cup passes again and again. The room grows warmer. Words loosen. Laughter rises. Promises slip out like fish. And in his intoxication, Enki gives Inanna the me, one after another. Kingship, craft, music, power. More than 100 decrees, handed over as casually as a drunk man, handing away jewelry in a tavern. Inanna loads them onto her boat and flees. When Enki sobers, he realizes what happened. He sends creatures after her, monsters and demons, to retrieve the stolen powers. The chase is frantic, like a nightmare where you run and the ground pulls at your feet. But Inanna is fast. She reaches Uruk and keeps the me. And here is the chilling implication. Even among gods, knowledge is not freely shared. It is fought over, stolen, chased, guarded. If gods treat knowledge like loot, what do humans get? They get scraps. They get the version that serves divine interests. This is why human beings in these myths rarely become truly free through wisdom. Wisdom is dangerous. Wisdom threatens hierarchy. When a human gets too close, something happens. A story from later tradition, darker in its quiet way, is about Adapa, a priest, a son of Enki, a man given exceptional knowledge. Adapa knows rituals. He knows purification. He knows secrets. He is wise enough that his wisdom becomes noticeable. One day, he is fishing and the south wind overturns his boat. In rage, he curses the wind. The curse is so strong the wind's wings break and the wind stops blowing across the world. Suddenly, a human has affected the cosmos. Anu notices. Adapa is summoned to heaven. Now imagine that ascent, because in a sleep story, the journey matters as much as the verdict. Adapa stands at the threshold of the sky. The air changes. It becomes thinner, sharper. The light is strange, too clean. He feels his own heartbeat loud in his chest. He feels his mouth dry. He feels as if his skin is too heavy for this place. Enki gives him advice before he goes. The sky god will offer you food and water. Enki says, do not accept. It will be the food and water of death. It sounds protective. It sounds like fatherly care. But in heaven, something unexpected happens. Anu is impressed. The high god offers Adapa not death, but life, bread of life, water of life, immortality, the one thing that would lift a human into divine status. Adapa refuses. He refuses because he trusts Enki, and he returns to Earth still mortal. Whether Enki lied on purpose or made a mistake, the pattern feels the same. When a human reaches toward the boundary closes. Sometimes it closes with violence, sometimes with deception, sometimes with a quiet, fatherly warning that is actually a trap. This is why the Anunnaki remain dread figures. They do not simply punish disobedience, they manage possibility. They keep humans useful, intelligent enough to work, not enough to threaten. And kingship becomes the perfect tool. After the flood, tradition says kingship is lowered from heaven, a divine institution meant to organize humans. But look at what it does. It creates a chain. Gods above, king below them, people below him. The king becomes the funnel for divine will, the mouth that speaks on behalf of heaven. If you resist the king, you resist the gods, and the king knows his power is borrowed. In some cities, rituals humiliate him, his crown removed, his cheeks slapped. He must swear he has not neglected the gods. Only then is authority returned, not humility. Reminder, a leash on the one holding the leash. So the society rebuilds under a structure that mirrors the cosmic tower, temples at the top of economy, priests interpreting signs, kings collecting labor, people working canals and fields, always with the flood memory behind their eyes. And behind all of that, deeper than daily fear, is the underworld, Kur, Yerkala, a place where everyone goes, king or worker, generous or cruel, not reward, not paradise, dust, hunger, shadows. The thought of Kur shapes everything. If death offers no escape, you cling harder to life. You obey harder. You bargain harder. You feed the gods harder. Because the gods control the only world where you can taste bread and hear music. When you are safe in your own bed, you can let this be only a story. You can hear the old dread without letting it bite. Listen to the fire. Listen to the quiet of your room. Let the underworld stay under the words. In the next part of our long night, the dread will deepen. We will step into the temple economy, into curses carved on stones, into the idea that even cities can be abandoned when the divine assembly changes its mind. For now, rest in the slow rhythm of rebuilding, brick by brick, breath by breath. The ancient world begins again, and fear is woven into it like straw and clay. I want to linger a little longer in the rebuilt city, because this is where fear becomes habit. Habit becomes tradition. Tradition becomes something a child thinks is simply how the world is. Picture a morning in a temple complex. The sun is barely up, and the air is still cool enough that you feel it on your forearms like a thin cloth. The courtyard stones are damp with night. A priest steps barefoot across them, and the dampness kisses the soles of his feet. He carries a small bowl of water. The bowl is clay, smooth from use, and the water inside trembles with each step, catching a pale reflection of sky. He reaches the inner doorway. He pauses, not because he is tired, because he is careful. He whispers the waking formula, the words meant to rouse the statue the way you might rouse a sleeping king, gently, respectfully, without startling him into anger. The phrase is old, It has been said every morning for generations. It feels like a key turning in a lock. Inside, lamplight glows. The statue sits in shadow. Its face is calm. The priest feels his own heart beat faster anyway. He lifts the bowl and pours water over the statue's hands. The water runs down stone fingers, dripping into a basin below. The sound is soft. Plink, plink. It is almost soothing if you forget what it means. The god is being washed. Then the statue is dressed. Fine linen, embroidered cloth, jewelry, a crown. The priest's hands move with precision, the way you handle something that could punish you. The cloth smells of clean fiber and incense. The jewelry is cool and heavy. When a gold piece touches stone, it makes a tiny click, and the priest flinches, even though he tries not to. Then comes the meal. Bread is brought in on a tray. Dates, meat, beer. The smell fills the chamber and makes a human belly respond, because bodies do not care about theology. Bodies care about food. The offerings are placed carefully. The priest steps back. He waits, head bowed, while the god is believed to take the essence of the food. Only after that invisible eating does the human world get to eat what is left. Imagine how that shapes a mind. Imagine a child brought to the temple on a festival day. The child watches priests feed stone. The child smells roast meat and feels hunger. The child learns that even hunger must wait. The child learns that the gods shares first, always first. Music begins. A lyre is plucked. A flute breathes a thin note. Singers chant hymns that praise the god's greatness and the human's smallness. The words are not always tender. Sometimes they are blunt. I am your servant. I tremble at your glance. Your word is a yoke on the neck of all. To a modern ear, it sounds harsh. To them, it sounds like realism. Because the flood proved what the gods can do. And so daily life becomes a constant negotiation, not only with weather, but with interpretation, omens, dreams, strange signs. A sheep is brought for sacrifice. Its wool is thick and warm. Its eye is wide. The priest murmurs words, then makes the cut. Blood flows into a shallow channel. The smell is metallic, sharp. The body twitches, then stills. The liver is removed, still warm, slick in the priest's hands. The liver is examined. Every ridge, every mark, every unusual shape is read as a sentence. If a mark looks like a crack, perhaps a city wall will crack. If a lobe is swollen, perhaps a king will swell with pride and fall. It sounds strange, yes, but sit with the human desperation beneath it. In a world where storms and disease feel like moods, you would give anything for a hint, a warning, a clue. Even a liver can become a map if your fear is strong enough. Sometimes the signs are in the sky. An eclipse, the moon swallowed, the light gone. People stand in courtyards and look up, mouths open, and the darkness feels like a giant hand closing over their world. Mothers pull children indoors. Men whisper names of gods with dry lips. The priests say, "The gods are angry." The city listens. And when the city listens, it obeys harder. More offerings, more rituals, more fasting, more weeping before stone. There are also words carved into clay and stone. Words that sound like prayers but function like locks. Legal documents end with curses. If anyone moves this boundary stone, may the gods extinguish his seed. If anyone alters this tablet, may his house become a ruin heap. May famine stalk his children. May his name be erased. May the underworld claim him early. These curses are not poetry for beauty. They are enforcement. They are a way of calling divine terror down into human disputes. If the court is weak, the gods are strong. If a neighbor cheats you, perhaps Enlil will punish him when you cannot. Imagine living with that, with divine wrath as background noise to every contract, every marriage, every inheritance. Even in ordinary quarrels, The Anunnaki are invoked like knives kept under the table. And then, in moments of extreme crisis, fear grows teeth. A city loses a battle. A drought stretches too long. A plague returns. People look for a substitute, a way to divert divine anger onto one body instead of many. Some traditions speak of a proxy king, a man enthroned briefly, as if he were the true ruler, crowned, dressed, praised. Then, when the danger passes, or the omen indicates doom, he is removed. The ritual is murky in the sources, part symbolic, part chilling possibility. The point remains, one life offered as a shield. Better one, the logic whispers, than all. The candle beside you burns steadily. The old logic fades into quiet. Fear teaches bargains, bargains teach sleep. The fire has settled into a quiet bed of coals, and the candlelight keeps leaning and straightening, like a slow breath you can watch. Somewhere far away in time, on the flat Mesopotamian plain, that same kind of light once trembled on temple walls. Oil lamps, bowls of fat, small flames held inside clay shells. The air smelled of smoke and warm dust. Even at night, the stone and brick remembered the sun. In that world, fear was not a sudden thing. It was a habit, a daily posture, a way of holding your shoulders, a way of lowering your eyes when you passed the steps of the ziggurat. People did not say, "I feel safe." They said, "I hope the gods do not notice me in the wrong way." And when the day ended, when the gates closed and the streets grew quieter, another kind of dread began to stir. Not the dread of war or hunger, not the dread of storms, a deeper dread that waited under every heartbeat, the dread of what came after. You can almost hear it if you picture a family in a mud brick home, the roof beams creaking softly as they cool. A bowl of water set near the doorway, a small lamp on a shelf. The father lying back, eyes open in the dark, listening to his children breathe. He is not thinking about tomorrow's irrigation work. Not yet. He is thinking about the underworld, the place the scribes called Kur, or Urkala, the land of no return. I always find it strange, honestly, how calm that name sounds. Land of no return. Not a scream, not a curse, just a fact. Like saying, the river runs south. Like saying, the sun sets. The underworld was not a punishment in the way later religions imagined. It was a destination. Everyone went. Kings, priests, farmers, thieves. Your deeds might change small details. Maybe a better corner. Maybe a little more water. The direction did not change. Try to imagine how that shaped a person's sleep. In our world, we sometimes lie awake thinking, what if? In theirs, the what if had already been answered. The only question left was, how heavy will it be when I arrive? They pictured the underworld as a house of dust. Dust that got into your mouth, dust that clung to your skin, dust that turned food into grit. In some poems, the dead ate clay. In others, they drank muddy water that never satisfied. It was not fire. It was not glory. It was monotony, dimness, and the slow forgetting of sunlight. And there were gates, 7 gates, always 7, a number that feels like a stairwell in the mind, a number you can count in the dark. At each gate, something was taken, not just objects, something in you, some layer of who you had been, a ring, a garment, a sign of status, a name that mattered less and less the deeper you went. A person in Mesopotamia could watch a funeral and feel, in their bones, that the dead were not simply gone. The dead had become residents of a lower city, a shadow society with its own rules and hunger. That is why offerings mattered. Bread, beer, a little oil poured into the ground, not because the gods were pleased, but because the dead were thirsty. It is a quiet kind of terror, the thought that your comfort after death depends on whether your descendants remember to bring you a crust of bread. And above those shadows, seated like judges in a dim hall, were the Anunnaki of the underworld, the same name that meant royal blood, heavenly descent, the ones who came down. In some stories, they were 7 as well. 7 judges, 7 faces you could not charm. People said the Anunnaki's eyes were the eyes of death. Their voices were the voices of a flood. That line always makes my skin tighten a little. Not because it is loud, but because it is exact. A flood does not argue. A flood does not negotiate. It rises, it covers, it decides. If you want to understand why Mesopotamians feared rather than adored, come here. Come to the underworld hall, not with your body, not with your waking mind, just with imagination, the safe kind, the kind that stays behind your eyelids. Picture a corridor of packed earth sloping down. The air gets cooler, thicker. Your footsteps make a soft, dry sound, like walking on old flour. Somewhere ahead there is a gate, metal bolts, a stone threshold worn smooth by countless invisible feet. The gatekeeper does not smile. The gatekeeper does not hate you. The gatekeeper is a function. You pass. Something is taken. You feel lighter, but not in a pleasant way. You feel thinner, as if your life above ground is being peeled away. You pass again. Another gate. Another taking. By the 7th, you are bare of pretenses. Whatever you were proud of, whatever you hid behind, is gone. Now you stand in a dark chamber. The ceiling is low. The walls sweat a kind of cold, a faint smell of damp clay. All around you, other dead stand quietly, shoulders slumped, eyes dull, not because they are evil, but because they have been there too long. At the far end, on a raised platform, sit the judges. They do not glow like later angels. They do not roar like monsters. They are simply present, and their presence weighs more than stone. This is the Mesopotamian afterlife. It is administration. It is management. It is classification. You are not rewarded for virtue. You are placed, and it is not only humans who are vulnerable in this system. One of the most frightening moments in Mesopotamian myth is that even a goddess can be stripped and judged. Inanna, queen of heaven, goddess of love and war, decided to descend. Why did she go? The poems do not give you a comfortable reason. They give you an ambiguity, a shadow where your mind has to fill in the shape. Maybe she wanted power. Maybe she wanted to challenge her sister. Maybe she wanted to prove she could walk into death and return. That is the thing about gods in these stories. They act. They do not explain. Picture Inanna at the edge of the underworld, standing before the first gate. She wears her crown, her jewelry, her finest garments. The metal catches the light. Her hair is carefully arranged. She looks like authority. The gatekeeper looks at her and does what a gatekeeper does. He sends word to Ereshkigal, queen of the dead. The answer comes back. Let her in. According to the rules, even for a goddess. At the first gate, Inanna removes her crown. At the second, her earrings. At the third, her necklace. Each piece comes off with a small sound, metal against skin, cloth sliding, a faint clink that seems too delicate for such a dangerous journey. You can almost feel the chill touching the places that were covered. Gate after gate, she is stripped. By the 7th gate, she stands naked and powerless. Then the judges look at her. The poem says, "The underworld fixed the eye of death on her." I want you to hear that phrase slowly. Eye of death. Not a metaphor, a function, a gaze that ends things. Inanna is judged. She is struck down. She is turned into a corpse and hung on a hook like meat. Even the Queen of Heaven can be reduced to matter in the house of dust. If that is what happens to her, imagine what a farmer believes will happen to him. This is why temples were not comfort. They were insurance. They were negotiation with a hierarchy that never forgot its place above you. And still, people lived. They married. They baked bread. They had children. They laughed sometimes. The human spirit does that, even in the shadow of dread. It finds small warmth. It also finds small ways to survive inside the rules. That is why people used priests to interpret signs. That is why they wrote curses on boundary stones, long lines of threat for anyone who altered a text. May the gods erase his name. May his children wither. May his house become a ruin heap. This was not poetry for fun. It was law with teeth. Cities could worship for centuries and still be ruined. The laments say the gods gathered in assembly, spoke a decision, and the decision did not change. So you learned to relax in smaller increments, a breath, a moment, a warm bowl of beer, a hand on a child's hair, a quiet prayer that did not ask for love, only for not being crushed. That is what I want to give you now, the safe version of that small relaxation. You are not under a ziggurat. You are not being watched by stone eyes in a temple. The underworld is not beneath your floor. It is a story on clay, far away. Let the judges remain in their dark hall, behind 7 gates, behind thousands of years. Here, the only thing that rises and falls is your breath, slow, gentle, uncounted. Picture a burial outside the city wall at dawn. The sky is pale, not yet blue, more like watered milk. The ground is cool, damp in patches where night mist has settled. Men carry the body on a woven mat. The mat sags under the familiar weight that is now unfamiliar because it will never move again. Sand grains stick to the mat's fibers. A woman's hands tremble as she smooths the dead man's hair one last time, fingertips catching on a strand, then releasing it. She whispers his name, not loudly, almost in. The grave is not deep like modern graves. It is a careful hollow. They place small items beside him, a cup, a bead, a bit of cloth, not treasure, not glory, just reminders. Someone pours a little beer into the soil, and the earth drinks it immediately, darkening for a moment before it dries. The smell rises, sour sweet. The family stands very still, listening to the last sounds of the living world. A bird calling once, a donkey braying far away, the faint splash of water in a canal. Then they cover him. As the dirt falls, it makes a soft, granular hiss. It sounds too gentle for what it means. When they return home, they do not slam the door. They do not speak much. They rinse their hands in a bowl and watch the water turn cloudy. That cloudy water feels like the boundary between worlds. They pour it outside, careful where, as if the ground itself might remember. Days later, on the first night after the burial, the family sets a small meal near the corner of the room. A crust of bread, a sip of beer, a drop of oil. The lamp burns low. Shadows stretch and pull back. The children stare at the offering, half curious, half afraid. The mother tells them, softly, this is for him now. The father, in the dark, does not say what he is thinking, but you can guess. He is thinking, if we forget, will he wander thirsty? If we forget, will he come back angry? If we forget, will. And there is a second fear layered under that first one. If the dead need feeding, then the living are never truly free of obligation. Even love becomes duty. Even grief becomes a schedule. That is the world the Anunnaki oversaw. Not only storms and kings, but the invisible economy of ghosts. In some incantations, people beg for a restless spirit to be calmed, to stop scratching at the edge of sleep. They burn fragrant plants, bitter smoke that stings the eyes, and they speak formula words, old words, words pressed into memory, like marks into clay. They are not praying for paradise. They are praying for quiet. I can almost see a priest in that dim room, his voice low, his palms lifted, the flame wobbling as he speaks. Outside, the city is silent, except for the occasional splash of a rat in a drain. Inside, the family holds their breath, listening for any sign that the unseen guest has accepted the offering. and moved on. You can understand, then, why the underworld stories mattered. They were not philosophy. They were bedtime reality. The living feared the gods. The living feared the dead. The living feared the thin place between. Before sleep, some people would press their forehead to the cool floor and whisper a line that was more like a sigh than a sentence. Not, "I love you." Not, "Thank you." Just, "Spare us." The clay beneath their skin held the day's heat and then slowly gave it up. The lamp hissed. The wick glowed orange at the tip. A dog barked once in the distance, then went quiet. In that pause, a person could feel how vast the sky was, how thin the roof was, how close the unknown felt. Then they would lie back, pull a ruff. That is the strange courage of ordinary lives. In Part 8, we will take the last steps out of this ancient shadow. We will see how these fears traveled forward, reshaped, renamed, turned into modern stories until they became mirrors for our own unease. For now, just rest here in the candlelight with the fire's soft hush. The room stays the same, and that sameness is a kind of medicine. The candle's flame is smaller now. The fire gives off a steady warmth that does not demand anything. You do not have to feed it offerings. You do not have to read omens in it. You can simply feel it, like a calm hand near your skin. That is a big difference between you and the first cities. In Mesopotamia, every warmth could be suspicious. A warm wind might be a sign. A warm winter might be a warning. A warmth that lasted too long might mean the gods were gathering something in the sky. They lived with that constant interpretive tension, always wondering if the world was just being the world or if it was a message. And the stories of the Anunnaki carried that tension forward for thousands of years. They did not disappear when a city fell. They flowed into new languages, new empires, new names. Like water that slips beneath a door, invisible, then shows up on the other side of the room. When Sumer faded, Babylon inherited the clay and the fear. Priests copied the old myths and adjusted them. They placed new gods at the top, made Marduk king, reshaped the divine court. Yet the emotional core remained. Creation still began with violence. Order still required blood. The powerful still ruled because they could. You can feel it in the Babylonian creation epic, the way the world is formed from a defeated body. It is not a gentle beginning. It is a reminder that existence in this tradition is built on conquest. Later, Assyria rose, and with it, a religion that marched in step with armies. Kings described themselves as chosen weapons of the gods. Cities were sacked, fields burned, people chained, and it was framed as divine will. The terrifying part is how easily theology becomes permission, how quickly a story about cosmic hierarchy becomes a story that justifies human hierarchy. So the Anunnaki become more than gods in a myth. They become a shape the mind uses to understand power. Power that feeds on labor, power that demands tribute, power that punishes unpredictably. Then, farther west, the same old stories brush against other traditions. Flood myths are the clearest bridge. In Atrahasis and in Gilgamesh, the gods decide humanity is too loud, too numerous, too annoying. They send a flood. One man is warned. A boat is built. Birds are released. A mountain is reached. Sacrifice rises. The gods react. In the Hebrew tradition, the bones of the narrative remain recognizable, yet the motive shifts. The flood becomes moral judgment, corruption, violence. The story keeps the structure but changes the heart. It is as if an old dread has been refashioned into a different kind of fear, a fear that moves inward, not only the fear of storms, but the fear of being judged for what you are inside. You can see the echo again in the Tower of Babel story, a tower on the plain of Shinar, a people building upward, a deity descending, suspicious of human ambition, scattering language. It reads like a shadowed critique of ziggurats, those step towers that tried to bridge heaven and earth. In Mesopotamia, the tower is a place to host the gods. In the later story, the tower is a boundary violation, different theology, same anxiety, humans reaching up, powers above saying, not so fast. And then there are the half-divine figures, the uneasy hybrids, Gilgamesh as two-thirds god, the Nephilim as mighty ones of old. The boundary between human and divine becomes a thin line that stories keep crossing, then quickly seal again, as if the universe has rules it will enforce. Over time, polytheistic fear becomes concentrated. A divine council becomes one all-seeing gaze. That can feel simpler, yet it can also feel heavier. Instead of guessing which god is angry, you fear a single presence that knows everything. The ancient dread does not vanish. It changes costume. It also changes into modern obsession. Even now, in a world of satellites and medicine and electric light, the Anunnaki still walk in people's imaginations. Not in temples, but in documentaries, novels, games, late-night conversations that start with, "What if?" In the 20th century, a man named Zecharia Sitchin looked at the same Mesopotamian tablets scholars had been translating and claimed they were not myth at all. He argued the Anunnaki were extraterrestrials from a planet called Nibiru, arriving on a long orbit, coming to Earth for resources, creating humans as engineered labor. It is a story that grips the modern mind for a reason. It takes ancient fear and gives it a sci-fi body. It says the dread was not just psychological. It was inherited memory of real visitors with real power. Supporters point to the sophistication of ancient astronomy, to flood myths around the world, to the repeated theme of mixing divine essence with clay, to the language of yokes and burdens. Scholars respond with a different kind of certainty. They point out translation errors. They explain that Nibiru is a flexible celestial term in Mesopotamian texts, a crossing point, a star, sometimes associated with known planets, not a hidden world on a giant orbit. They show how creation language in the ancient Near East often uses potters and wombs, clay and blood, as metaphor for life. Two readings, two moods. One says aliens, one says myth. In between sits the quiet fact. The tablets are real. The fear was real. The temples were real. The dread-shaped law, kingship, labor, family life, sleep. Sometimes people ask why a theory like Sitchin's keeps returning, like a tide that never fully recedes. I think it has less to do with Sumerian grammar, and more to do with the feeling in the human chest when power looks unreachable. Modern life has its own ziggurats, not brick towers, but towers of finance, towers of technology, towers of decisions made behind tinted glass. You can work hard. You can follow rules. You can still feel small. A sudden recession, a sudden illness, a sudden war in a place you have never seen on a map, and your life shifts. The old Mesopotamian instinct wakes up in a new body. There must be a council somewhere. There must be a hidden order. There must be someone deciding. Ancient astronaut stories give that instinct a name. They say, yes, there are rulers above. They came from the sky. They shaped us. They still watch. It is eerie how familiar that structure is. You can see why it would feel persuasive to someone reading the clay tablets for the first time. The language of labor, the insistence that humans were made to bear burdens, the stories where the gods need offerings, the scene after the flood where they crowd around the smoke like hungry insects. Those are not gentle gods. They sound like managers. Then, the modern mind takes the next step and says, maybe they were not gods at all. Maybe they were engineers. Scholars push back because they have spent lifetimes with the signs, the wedges, the broken edges of tablets. They know how a single mark can change a word. They know how myths reuse images across cultures. They know how ancient people spoke in metaphor Because metaphor was the most precise tool they had for invisible forces. A potter shaping clay is not a lab. Blood mixed into earth is not a syringe. A flying throne is not a spacecraft. Sometimes it is just poetry trying to hold something too large. Still, even if Sitchin is wrong about planets, he is not wrong about the emotional truth. The texts do describe a world where humans are beneath divine authority. They do describe gods who punish whole populations. They do describe knowledge as a possession controlled by those above. That is why the theory keeps breathing. It speaks to a real human fear that we are useful, not cherished. And yet, there is a small turning point hidden inside that fear. If we are capable of imagining creators who treat us as tools, then we are also capable of noticing when we treat each other like tools. The old myths become warnings, not instructions. They show what happens when hierarchy becomes absolute. They show what happens when power forgets empathy. That is a heavy thought for night, so I will soften it. Let the warning be a distant lantern, not a knife. Let it sit far away on the plain, a tiny point of light under a huge sky, because you are not in that plane now. You are here, with a body that is allowed to be simply a body. Listen for a moment to the smallest sounds around you. Maybe there is a faint buzz of electricity in a wall. Maybe the fabric of your blanket shifts as you breathe. Maybe somewhere outside, a car passes, and the sound fades like a wave pulling back into the sea. These are your omens, and they mean only one thing. The night continues, quietly, safely. If you want a final image from Mesopotamia that is not sharp, take this one, a canal at night. The water is dark, almost black, reflecting a thin strip of moon. Reeds whisper at the edge. Insects make a soft, steady chorus. The city behind is reduced to silhouettes, low roofs, a distant temple outline, not threatening, just present. A small boat is tied to a stake. The rope is slack. The boat rocks once, twice, then settles. The water carries the movement away. That is what sleep can be. A rocking, a settling, a carrying away. The old stories can stand like statues on a temple platform, heavy and still. You do not have to climb toward them. You can let them be part of the landscape of history, while your own mind drifts down into rest. If your thoughts try to pull you back, treat them like the wind in the reeds. Hear them, let them pass. Do not chase. Your breathing is enough. Your bed is enough. This room, with its quiet warmth, is enough. And when the underworld gates appear in your imagination, see them closing gently, not as a trap, but as a boundary that keeps old fears where they belong. The judges remain seated. The council remains distant. The ziggurat remains far away. The flood remains in a tablet's broken lines. Here, only the candle matters. It burns. It softens the dark. Then it grows small. Then it becomes one last point of light. Then, even that point is not needed, because you can sleep without guarding yourself. Good night.